On an ordinary fall day in Indiana, more than 20 years after 19-year-old Jill Behrman left for a morning bike ride and never came home, a federal judge issued a decision this state does not often see in a homicide case. He reversed a conviction. Not because a new suspect came forward, not because a dramatic DNA discovery changed everything, and not because a witness recanted or a confession emerged. He reversed it because when the trial record was examined, line by line, the court determined that errors had occurred, errors significant enough to undermine confidence in the fairness of the proceeding. They had a suspect, they had a narrative, they had a conviction, but the court concluded they did not have a verdict that could legally stand. And with that ruling, a 65-year sentence temporarily fell away.
That's the part people don't always understand. The decision didn't say he's innocent. It said the process wasn't solid enough. And that alone can shake a family to the core. They were told the case was solved. They were told the right person was behind bars. They were told they had closure. And then suddenly, maybe not.
It's like losing her twice. Once in 2000 when she disappeared, and again years later when the foundation her family had been standing on was called into question. And that's why Jill's case is where we start this season, because it reveals something fundamental, something uncomfortable about how cases can unfold in this state. Indiana doesn't just have investigative challenges. It doesn't just have court challenges. It has a systemic problem. And this case shows how far-reaching the consequences can be. We're not journalists parachuting into Indiana. We're not outsiders reading headlines and trying to make sense of them. We live here. We drive these roads. We know these towns. And we've watched these cases unfold, sometimes for decades. I'm Lacey.
And I'm Nick.
And to be honest, we've spent a good part of our lives walking these cases ourselves, tracking routes, reading records, breaking down timelines, trying to understand, how did this happen here? And how do we still not have answers? Because far too many people in this state are missing or murdered, and far too many cases reach no resolution, or they collapse years later under legal review.
And that's what sparked this podcast. Not the idea that we could solve these cases, but the belief that someone needs to talk about them with honesty.
So that's what we're going to do. Every episode starts with what we call our evidence book. That's the collection of things we're willing to treat as evidence. Court filings and appellate rulings, law enforcement statements, public records, verified timelines, maps and geography, documents we can cross-check. We do not rely on rumors, message board theories, friend of a friend stories, anonymous claims that can't be verified. If it can't be documented, cross-referenced, or supported, it doesn't go in the evidence book. When something is alleged, we'll call it alleged. And when something is disputed, we'll tell you who's disputing it. And when something is unknown, we're not going to fill in the gap just to make a clearer story. Our goal isn't to accuse anyone. Our goal isn't sensationalism. Our goal is clarity. To walk each case piece by piece, showing what the evidence supports, what the courts actually ruled, and where the system may have broken down. Because the patterns aren't random, they repeat. This is the Casewalker Chronicles, Season 1, Indiana Unresolved. And Episode 1 begins with a case Indiana once believed was solved. To understand how the conviction happened, we have to start with the story the jury heard in 2006. Jill Behrman was 19, a freshman at Indiana University. She went out for a routine morning bike ride, something she did often. She never came home. Search teams spread out. Police, volunteers, helicopters. 3 years later, a hunter discovered human remains in Morgan County. They were identified as Jill. She had been shot once in the back of the head with a shotgun. And based on a combination of witness statements, personal comments attributed to him, and observations about his behavior, the state charged John Robert Myers II with murder. Prosecutors presented a narrative that Myers encountered Jill on her bike, abducted her, took her to a remote area, and killed her. There was no DNA linking him to Jill, no fingerprints, no physical evidence tying him to the bike, the location, or the remains. But jurors heard a story, a cohesive narrative built from statements and interpretations, and they convicted him.
And honestly, hearing that version, I get how the jury reached a verdict. It sounds like a resolved case.
It does, until you look deeper. Because once appellate courts reviewed the evidence, the process, and the admissibility of certain testimony, a different picture emerged, one that ultimately led a federal court to reverse the conviction in 2019, a ruling that was later overturned on appeal in 2020 and followed by a 2023 order denying further habeas relief, reinstating the conviction fully. Before we go into those legal complexities, though, we need to talk about who Jill was, because she wasn't just a name in a file. She was a person, a 19-year-old with a routine, a family, a life, and all of that matters. Before we dig deeper into timelines, contradictions, or legal issues, we need to talk about Jill, because when true crime gets too focused on theories and evidence, it's easy for the central person to become a set of bullet points instead of a human being. Jill K. Behrman grew up right here in Bloomington, Indiana. She graduated from Bloomington High School South in 1999. She was a business major at Indiana University, living at home with her parents during her freshman year. Jill was responsible. She was reliable. She didn't miss commitments. And anyone who knew her would tell you she was active, especially on her bike. Cycling wasn't a hobby for her. It was a part of her life, a routine, a rhythm. And on May 31st, 2000, her routine was simple. A morning ride, come home, then work her scheduled noon to 3 shift at the IU Student Recreational Sports Center. Routine, predictable, normal.
See, that's one thing that really stuck out to me when we researched this is she wasn't out late, she wasn't meeting someone, she wasn't doing anything risky. It was a weekday morning on familiar roads before work and lunch with her dad and grandparents. Everything she did that morning points to someone who intended to be home very soon.
Exactly. And that's why people reacted so quickly when she didn't show up, because nothing about Jill suggested she would disappear. When a 19-year-old with a routine, with plans, a noon shift suddenly isn't where she's supposed to be, that's when you know something is wrong. And in Jill's case, something was very wrong. Let's walk through May 31st, 2000 step by step. The exact timing matters because this is where the case actually begins to fracture. Everything in this section is grounded in documents, computer logs, work schedules, witness statements, scent dog reports, and findings referenced in later appeals. Here's what we know with certainty. 9:32 a.m., Jill logs off the family computer, and this is confirmed digital evidence. It's the last authenticated action inside the home. She likely left for her morning ride within minutes. And remember, no home cameras, no cell phone pings, no smartwatch tracking, just routine. At that time, those things were not as common as they are today. Her plan? Simple. Ride, come home, go to work at noon.
And this is where the split happens, right? Where two totally different routes start forming.
Yes, exactly. From here, the investigation forks into two very different paths. One built on evidence, and one built, let's say, largely on assumption and a single disputed sighting. Route 1, which in this case is northbound, the evidence-based route, was supported by a valid witness around 10 a.m. who saw a cyclist matching Jill north of town. Scent dogs tracked her north. The timeline, which we know the route fits the 9:32 log-off, the location where her remains were eventually found in Morgan County. This route is consistent. It is geographically and temporally sound. Now, Route 2, southbound toward Harrell Road. This is the assumed route the investigators focused on early, but this route has serious problems. The timing does not work with a 9:32 departure. Jill would need to ride faster than her known pace. It contradicts the scent dog's trail, and later appellate analysis specifically noted timing inconsistencies with key southbound sightings. Any alleged 938 sighting of Jill on Harrell Road is statement only. It has never been independently verified by physical evidence, root logic, or later legal analysis. So when you strip away the assumptions and rely only on evidence-supported routing, Jill rode north. She was abducted somewhere along her actual route. She missed her noon shift. By afternoon, she was a missing person. Her morning was predictable. Her actions were routine. Nothing she did put her at risk by itself. But somewhere along that northbound route, someone crossed her path, and everything changed. Sometime around midday, a firefighter driving by saw something in the grass, Jill's bicycle. That discovery didn't just shift the search, it shaped the entire investigation. The bicycle wasn't damaged, not bent, not scraped, no broken chain, no skid marks, no disturbed gravel. The handlebars were aligned. The chain was intact. The bike appeared upright or neatly placed, consistent with being set down, not dropped. In investigative documents and later commentary, the bicycle's appearance is repeatedly noted as unusual for any crash-based scenario.
Yeah, that's the part that never makes sense to me. If a biker crashes or gets pushed off the road, something is wrong with that bike. But this looked like someone put it there.
And investigators at the time said the same thing. Nothing about that scene looked like Jill had been there when something went wrong. Search teams pushed south. K-9 units, ATVs, helicopter sweeps, volunteers. But here's the issue. Every other evidence point indicated north. The timeline, scent trails, witness accounts, the location of her remains. When one piece of evidence contradicts every other data point, you have to ask, is the evidence showing what happened or what someone wanted investigators to believe?
Important point. You're not saying who staged it, just that nothing about the scene matched the accident.
Right. We aren't assigning responsibility, we're analyzing the scene's characteristics. Crime scene analysts often warn that staged or relocated items share three traits. They're either too clean, too convenient, or too obvious. Jill was almost certainly never south. Now that we've walked the route and examined the misdirection, we're going to do what later courts effectively had to do. Walk this case backward. Strip away the assumptions, the interpretations, and that leaves us only with what the evidence supports. Because when you force the timeline to stand on its own, major parts of the original investigation start to shift. Let's break down the fixed points. 9:32 a.m., Jill logs off the family computer. This is firm digital evidence. No interpretation, no dispute. 9:38 a.m. This is where the cracks appear. For Jill to be southbound at 9:38, she would have needed to leave earlier than 9:32, or she would have needed to ride at a pace inconsistent with her known habits. Later analysis noted that the timing did not fit and that this early southbound narrative was not supported by the stronger northbound evidence. 10 a.m. A witness reported seeing a female cyclist matching Jill, appearance, direction, terrain, and timing, and that report lines up with the scent dog tracking, the later recovery area in Morgan County. This is the route that makes sense. Scent dogs tracked her north. Multiple canine reports indicated tracking consistent with the northbound route, not south. The conclusion, based on all corroborating evidence, Jill almost certainly never went south. Her true route was north.
And so just fixing the timeline changes the entire case.
It does, because once the Harrell Road sighting falls apart, the southbound narrative collapses with it. That leads us to another major issue, the testimony that sounded like a confession, but wasn't. In 2002, while the case was still unfolding, an incarcerated woman reported that her boyfriend had confessed to killing Jill during a domestic dispute. But the details changed repeatedly. Key elements contradicted physical evidence. Statements weren't corroborated, and parts were retracted. Later federal decisions described this testimony as unreliable and legally problematic. This is classic jailhouse informant territory. High risk for inaccuracy, high risk for contamination, and dangerous if it's treated as solid proof. The important legal point is this. The federal court did not say this person did it. It said the way this testimony was used at trial created constitutional problems for Myers. When that testimony is removed or discounted, the remaining case grows significantly weaker. Throughout the investigation, several witnesses recalled Myers making unusual remarks, like, "I did something bad, you'll read about me someday." But courts emphasized context matters, mental health matters, reliability matters. None of these statements placed Myers with Jill. None connected him to the bike, and none tied him to the Morgan County site where Jill was found. They were interpretive, but not factual. Legally, vague statements cannot substitute for evidence. There was no DNA linking Myers to Jill. No DNA linking Jill to Myers. No fingerprints, no ballistics match, no tire impressions, no fibers, no blood evidence. Nothing tied Myers to the crime scene. Nothing tied him to the bicycle. And nothing placed him on Jill's route. This absence does not prove innocence, but legally it is significant. Here's where everything converges. When the bicycle is questioned as reliable evidence, that uncertainty creates fractures throughout the prosecution's timeline. And if the bike's location did not reflect where Jill actually traveled, then the entire southbound narrative becomes significantly weaker. Once that narrative weakens, the southbound route falters, the timeline strains, witness interpretations shift, and behavioral assumptions become harder to support. And when all of those elements lose stability, what remains is a much narrower case than the jury originally heard.
So basically, if the bike isn't telling the truth, everything built around it starts to fall apart.
Yeah, it raises serious questions. And that's why the federal district court in 2019 found several aspects of the trial flawed enough to overturn the conviction. But that ruling did not remain in place. The state appealed, and in 2020, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the lower court's decision, and in 2023, the district court denied further habeas relief, leaving the conviction intact. The legal reality today is that John Myers is still the person legally convicted of Jill Behrman's murder. He remains incarcerated. The conviction stands, but also true, concerns about aspects of the investigation and trial have never fully disappeared. The public and the case's legal history reflect ongoing uncertainty, so the case sits in a complicated space. A conviction that stands, but a narrative that carries many unanswered questions. A legal conclusion, but not necessarily a settled one. And for Jill's family, that uncertainty is its own kind of heartbreak. Before we talk about what does fit, we need to be honest about what we don't know. Because just like so many of the cases we'll cover this season, Jill's story has a gap we can't fill. Here is what remains unknown. The exact point of her abduction. We don't know the precise spot along her northbound route where someone intercepted her. We don't know the exact time of the crime. Now, we have a general window, but no verified timestamp of when Jill was attacked or killed. The identity of the person responsible. Now, the law has named Myers. The evidence has never produced a definitive physical tie to any individual. What happened between the abduction and the moment her body was left in Morgan County? We don't know the route, we don't know the vehicle, and we don't know the exact sequence. Whether anyone else has information that has never reached law enforcement, silence doesn't always mean no one knows. Sometimes it just means no one's talked. Those aren't gaps we're going to paper over with theories. They are unknowns we have to live with, unless new information comes forward. Now, this is the point in most true crime podcasts where someone drops a theory, names a suspect, makes an accusation, pretends the case has a single clean solution. And we're not going to do that. That's irresponsible, unethical, and it hurts families, and it ignores how complicated real cases are. So instead of theory, we're going to outline what we can reasonably say based on verified evidence, court findings, the timeline, geographic facts, and the appellate rulings themselves. No speculation, no accusations, only what the evidence supports. What does the evidence support? Number 1, Jill was abducted along her true route, north. This conclusion aligns with the 932 computer logoff, her established cycling patterns, the valid 10 a.m. northbound witness, scent dog tracking, and the location of her remains being found in Morgan County. Nothing credible places her south that morning. Number 2, the bike's condition suggests it may have been placed. Records and commentary do note no crash damage, no disturbed vegetation, no mechanical failure, no signs Jill herself was at the scene. The bicycle's appearance was unusual for an accident or struggle. This does not tell us who placed the bike, but it strongly suggests the bike location did not reflect where she was abducted. Number 3, Jill was transported out of Monroe County. Her remains were found in Morgan County, remote, wooded, requiring a vehicle, knowledge of back roads, time, privacy. These factors suggest planning or, at the very least, familiarity. Number 4, the person responsible acted without drawing attention. The timeline suggests no reliable witnesses to an attack, no public struggle documented, enough freedom of movement to relocate the bicycle. This is not chaotic. Spur-of-the-moment panic behavior? No. It indicates composure. Number 5, there was no physical evidence tying Myers to the crime. This does not prove innocence, but it is a legally significant fact. The federal district court highlighted evidentiary weaknesses. The 7th Circuit focused on the strength of the circumstantial case and reinstated the conviction. Both things are true. The case against Myers contained no physical evidence, no DNA, no forensic tie to the route or remains, testimony later described as unreliable or problematic. This does not answer who committed the crime. It clarifies only what is supported. What doesn't fit the evidence? The fully southbound route, contradicted by timing, scent reports, and later legal commentary. The bike as the true crime scene. Evidence indicates otherwise. Treating vague comments as confessions, courts rejected this as insufficient on its own. Relying on uncorroborated jailhouse-style confession testimony, central in the 2019 federal decision and the later appellate discussion.
Yeah, the only responsible version is the one based on what we can actually verify.
Exactly. A good investigation follows facts, not narratives. And the facts tell us Jill rode north. She was abducted. Her bike was left in a location inconsistent with her route. She was transported to a remote county, and the person who did this had not been definitively identified by physical evidence. That is the truth we can stand on. When the federal district court overturned Myers' conviction in 2019, it did not declare him innocent. It did not identify another suspect, and it did not conclude what actually happened. What it did was highlight constitutional errors in how the trial was conducted, but that ruling did not remain in effect. The state appealed, and in 2020, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the lower court's decision, and in 2023, the district court denied further habeas relief. The conviction stands. The current legal status, as we know, John Myers remains the person legally convicted of Jill Behrman's murder. He remains incarcerated. The conviction stands today. But also true, the case's legal history shows vulnerabilities that raise serious questions about parts of the investigation and trial. Those vulnerabilities reopened emotional wounds for Jill's family. Imagine living through the disappearance, the searches, the years of uncertainty, the trial, the conviction, 15 years of believing the case was resolved, and then suddenly being told that the legal foundation may not have been solid.
See, that's the part that stays with me. The emotional whiplash her parents must have experienced.
It's devastating, and it underscores why the integrity of an investigation matters. Real justice is more than a conviction. It's certainty, it's stability, it's truth that can withstand scrutiny at every level. And Jill and her family. They deserve that. Before we close today's episode, we want to highlight 2 missing persons from Indiana. 2 families still waiting, still searching, and still hoping for answers. Our first spotlight is Ashley Elaine Morris Mullis, NamUs ID MP24768, missing from Royertown, Muncie, Indiana, missing since September 19th, 2013. She was 27 at the age of her disappearance. Her height and weight, 5'3", approximately 95 to 110 pounds. She is categorized as endangered, missing, open, and active, and the investigating agency is the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. Ashley was just 27 years old when she disappeared from the Royertown area of Delaware County on September 19th, 2013. According to her NamUs entry and law enforcement releases, Ashley was last seen leaving a residence. She did not have her cell phone, and she did not take personal belongings needed for her day-to-day life. There have been no confirmed sightings of Ashley since that day, no verified communications, no documented travel outside the county. She left behind children, family, and a community that has spent more than a decade without answers. Investigators note several identifying characteristics, including multiple tattoos on her back and wrists, a very small physical frame, around 100 pounds. She had brown hair and blue eyes. Despite media coverage and an ongoing investigation, Ashley remains missing. If you have any information regarding her disappearance, contact the Delaware County Sheriff's Office or submit a tip through the NamUs portal under case MP24768. Even the smallest detail could matter.
And again, that's exactly why we talk about these cases. Someone out there knows something. And sometimes it just takes hearing a name again for a memory to surface.
Part of our mission is visibility, to highlight people who have not been found, cases that have not received the attention they deserve, and families who have lived years without answers. Today, we also spotlight Darian Burdine, NamUs ID MP31156, missing from Indianapolis, Indiana, missing since June 18th, 2013, just 19 years old at the age of disappearance, endangered, missing, open investigation. Darian was only 19 years old when they disappeared, the same age Jill was. According to NamUs, Darian was last seen on June 18th, 2013. In the years since, their family has lived in the space between hope and heartbreak. No confirmed sightings, no resolution, no answers, just silence, and the daily reality of not knowing what happened to someone they love. If you have any information, even something that feels insignificant, you can contact the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department or submit a tip through Darian's NamUs page. A memory, a detail, a small piece of information could be what brings them home.
And that's a big part of why we're doing this. These families deserve eyes on their cases. They deserve people who care enough to listen, to share, to pay attention. And if our platform reaches even one person who knows something, it matters.
Absolutely. At the end of every episode this season, we're going to spotlight someone who is still missing in Indiana, a name that deserves to be spoken, a story that still needs an ending, because every missing person is more than a case file. They are a life, a family, a future someone is waiting for. Thank you for walking through this case with us. It's heavy, it's unsettling, and it raises questions Indiana has lived with for more than 20 years, but it matters. And next time on the Casewalker Chronicles, we stay right here in Bloomington for another case that shaped this state, the disappearance of Lauren Spearer. Another young woman, another case without answers, another situation filled with contradictions, gaps, and familial investigative patterns that echo what we've seen today. These cases are connected by more than geography. They're connected by the system that failed them.
If you want to support the podcast, please follow, subscribe, and share the show. The more people listening, the more attention these cases get, and the more pressure there is for answers.
And if you have information, a perspective, or a detail you want to share about any of the cases we cover, you can reach us at casewalkerchronicles@gmail.com. We read everything. This is the Casewalker Chronicles, Season 1, Indiana, Unresolved. Thank you for listening, and as always, stay aware, stay safe, and keep walking with us.